Hello and welcome to today's video. I'm Jay and this is my 2023 reading wrap up. This time last year I did my 2022 reading wrap up, and at the end of that video I promised that I would do the exact same this year. So here I am, here it is. My 2023 reading goal on Goodreads was to read 13 books, and I did achieve that, which I'm very happy about because it was one more than what I achieved last year, which was 12. So I'm happy about that. I am reading more each year, which I think is pretty good. So in the exact same format as last year, I'm just going to go through each of the books that I read, talk about each one just a little bit, talk about what I thought about them and who I would recommend them to, if anybody. And then after that, I'm going to go through my stats for my sort of year in review thing on Goodreads and see what I think about those. The reason there are so many books behind me is because I'm in the middle of doing kind of a first chapter challenge. I'm going through each book, and for each one I'm setting a timer for 5 minutes and reading just as much as I can read in 5 minutes, and then writing down out of 10 how intrigued I am, really. This is all of my books that I own physically that I haven't read yet, so I'm hoping that doing that will sort of reduce the number of books that I've got on my physically owned TBR pile kind of thing. So yeah, that is why there are so many books behind me. Apologies. So in the same format as last year, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all the books that I read in 2023, roughly in order, talk about them. So let's get started. A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher is the first book that I read of 2023. It was a book club book, so Heather and I did a full sort of review type chat thing about this book, and if you want to watch that, that'll be linked down below. So if that's something that you find interesting, please do watch that. The general premise is it's about a girl called Mona who's 14 and she's a wizard, and the thing that she can sort of control is her sourdough starter. I enjoyed it. It was quite a easy read. It was quite sort of cute and enjoyable to a certain extent. There were certain parts of it that I did really enjoy, but the story didn't really feel very wrapped up. So it probably wasn't really my cup of tea, but I still enjoyed it. I rated it 3 stars on Goodreads, and realistically I read this quite a while ago and I don't think I've really thought about it very much since, so I think that sort of does say a lot about it not being really my cup of tea. I would probably recommend this to someone who was looking for something sort of really chill, some really easy to get into fiction. Maybe if a parent wanted to read something with one of their children, I guess. Yeah, I wouldn't sort of go shouting about this from the rooftops or anything. The next book I read was Several People Are Typing by Calvin Castlecae. I rated this 4 stars on Goodreads. I did really like it. It's weird, but it's very cool. It's basically about a guy who works for like a marketing agency, and he gets stuck in Slack, which is like a messaging platform that, like, you know, technical companies use to sort of internally message. It was good. I definitely enjoyed reading it and I read it very quickly, and I've recommended it to a few people actually. Like, I think people who work in tech who like kind of weird fiction that makes you think a little bit, I can definitely see other people enjoying it. So yeah, it's a pretty good book. I don't think I've sort of thought about it massively, but I have recommended it to people. I do think it's pretty easy to read. It's pretty weird. There are some weird sort of other things going on in the story. Just overall a pretty good book. I did enjoy it. The next book was Dinosaur Therapy by James Stewart. So this was a very easy read. It was originally a webcomic and it's been sort of turned into a book. It's really easy to read because it's mainly pictures basically. It's really cute. There's not really anything bad to say about it. It's very enjoyable to read basically. It's just really chill, really easy. I rated it 4 stars on Goodreads. I believe that the 3rd one is out now, which I am almost positive that I will read in 2024. So, you know, I think I sort of rate it quite highly. I would recommend it to most people. I would have thought. I don't think I have, but I'm sure Heather has recommended it to people. So yeah, I could sort of get behind that. So 6 of the 13 books that I read in 2023 were part of the Wayward Children series by Sean and Maguire. The first book in this series is called Every Heart a Doorway, and the basic premise of the series is that we're in the real world that, like, you know, you and I are in, but some children at some point see a portal into another world, and they go into that portal, and in that other world is just like a whole other world basically that is almost more suitable for that child. So this series of books follows the children that go into these portals to the other worlds, and it also follows the sort of aftermath of what happens when they come back and they're trying to like integrate themselves back into society, and their parents don't understand where they've been or like, you know, even believe them in some cases. It follows a school of kids who basically don't like being back in the real world and are wanting to go back to their own worlds. And there's, you know, the dynamics of like how that sort of plays is very interesting, and it sort of alternates between, we get a book in the real world about the kids that are back, and then we get a book that's sort of set in one of the worlds where like a child has gone to. So it's really interesting. I would for sure recommend reading the first one to basically anyone who wants to get into fiction or is already into fiction, I suppose, and then, you know, they can sort of decide whether they want to continue reading them. But for sure the first one, Every Heart a Doorway, is, I would consider it a very recommendable book. I think I rated the first one 5 stars, and of the other, you know, I've read the first 5 plus like a sort of mini story that sort of takes place in between 4 and 5. I rate them all between 4 and 5 stars. I think they're very good. I found them very bingeable. I think, you know, once I'd read the first one, I was properly... The next book I read was How to Keep House While Drowning, A Gentle Approach to Cleaning and Organising. This is by Casey Davis. Doesn't sound like the sort of thing that I would normally read, but the actual content of it was really good. So this book is kind of about dealing with feeling overwhelmed, I guess. I'd say it's about mental health, self-compassion, and executive function. These are all things that I really want to learn more about and want to sort of start applying those things that I'm learning to my own life going forwards. I really enjoyed this book. I think it was excellent, and it's probably one of the best books that I've read. So it's very gentle and non-judgmental whilst being sort of very realistic about what it's actually talking about. It's hard to sort of put into words like why it's worth reading, but I'd say in terms of, so I rated it 5 stars. Like I enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I thought it was very useful, and I would recommend this sort of wholeheartedly to anybody who thinks that they might have ADHD or does have ADHD, or have struggled with their ability to care for themselves or any sort of executive function type stuff. I would wholeheartedly recommend it. I think it's a extremely well put together book. The next one is called What If? Serious Scientific Answers to Absurd Hypothetical Questions. This is by Randall Munroe, who is the author of a webcomic called XKCD, which is very popular. It's essentially what it says in the subtitle. It's a bunch of ridiculous, absolutely crazy hypothetical questions, and then the author goes into like the science of how that would actually play out. The kind of weird questions that it asks are like, what would happen if all of the DNA in a person disappeared? What would happen if a glass of water was suddenly empty? Like, if it suddenly became a vacuum, like what would actually happen in the sort of very small amount of time afterwards? Another one was, how much energy would it take to move every human off the planet Earth? Just weird, like geeky hypothetical questions, and then he just goes into like how that would actually play out. If anyone who's read the webcomic XKCD or is even just like slightly geeky or nerdy, I would wholeheartedly recommend this book. I thought it was excellent. I also did rate it 5 stars on Goodreads, and yeah, I've sort of followed the XKCD webcomics for many years, probably pre-2010. I was sort of reading these webcomics on a regular basis, so I've sort of followed the weird geeky sort of subculture that's come out of it for a long time. So yeah, I really enjoyed the book. It came out a few years ago actually. I was quite late to picking it up. I also got the second one, What If 2, from the library, but I had to take it back before I could finish reading it, so that was a shame. But I will have a look actually to see if I can get it back, because it could be that the person who had loaned it out, which is why I had to give it back, has now given it back, so I'll probably get it out again, and if I can, I'll probably do that, and I'll probably end up finishing that in 2024, the second one that is, because very good. The next book that I read in 2023 was Strong Female Character by Fern Brady. Again, this was a book club book, so Heather and I did like quite a long video actually about this. We really sort of spoke about it quite a lot. We both really enjoyed it. We both rated it 5 stars, and it's very interesting perspective. Basically, you know, it's a memoir. It's about someone's life, and that's just really interesting to be able to get such a like deep perspective into somebody else's life. So a big part of the book is she was talking about like the process of getting diagnosed with autism. For starters, I'd recommend this book to anyone who wants to sort of get into memoirs. I've never read a memoir before and I found it very easy to read. I really flew through the book. I read it very fast. So I'd say it'd be very good first book to get into memoirs. And also because there's quite a lot of stuff in there about autism. If there's anyone who either has autism or suspects that they do, or has a family member who suspects that they do or does have autism, then I think it'd be a very good book to read, just to sort of gain more perspective on like how spectrum conditions really do affect everyone differently. So I think it's very worth picking up. It's a very good book. My final book that I read in 2023 was Shady Hollow by Jano Black. Again, this was a book club book. So Heather and I read it at the same time. We have done a video about it. That will again be linked in the description below. So if you want to hear our full thoughts about it, you can do so by watching the video, basically. I rated it 4 stars. I enjoyed it. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. I really did enjoy reading the book. It's just, it didn't grip me as much as other books have gripped me, and that's why I didn't give it 5 stars. But I don't have anything bad to say about it. I did really enjoy it. I did find it very easy to read. I thought the audiobook was really good as well, actually. There was quite a few times where I was only listening to the audiobook, actually, which is really good because I didn't actually think that I was able to follow along audiobooks without sort of reading them physically as well. So that was really good. Heather did say that she was going to read more books by this author, or in this series as well, actually. And I think if she thinks they're good, I will potentially read them as well. I don't see why not. I would recommend this book to anyone who wants some chill, easy to read fiction and just wants to have a nice time with a book, basically. It's about animals. It's a little bit of a sort of cozy mystery. I don't want to go in too much detail because we obviously covered it in the book club. But yeah, I think it was worth reading. I would recommend it to sort of anyone who wants to read easy fiction. I think it's now time to go into the stats. So my 2023 year in books, hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm looking at here. So I read 13 books, which I already said, which was my goal, so I'm very happy about that. I read 2,636 books according to this. I'm not actually sure, it's probably more because I did read some other books that I just haven't finished, and I don't always like update books as I'm going on Goodreads, so that probably is slightly more. The shortest book that I read was Juice Like Wounds, which is the part of the Wayward Children series. It's sort of like a mini story that came out in between number 4 and number 5, so it's kind of like 4.5, and it gives you a bit more explanation about what happened in one of the books previous. I enjoyed it. It was good. I think I rated it 4 stars. And then the longest book that I read this year was A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, which is surprising actually because I didn't think it was that long. It did take me quite a while to get through actually, so I suppose it shouldn't be that surprising. But yeah, that was 306 pages. The average book length that I read in 2023 was 202 pages, which is quite short. Yeah, there's been a few books that I've read that have been quite short. The most shelved was What If by Randall Munroe, which makes sense. It was a very popular book, you know, and it's been out for a few years as well. And I think most people who have heard of it probably would want to read it. So it does make sense. And then the least shelved was Dinosaur Therapy, which is a shame because it's really cute. It was really just nice and pleasant to read. It's a really nice book to get to read, to be honest. It probably makes quite a good gift as well. So I think it's a shame that it's the least shelved book. What can you do? My average rating was 4.2, which makes sense because I think pretty much every book I finish, I only finish them if I really like them. So I pretty much rate everything 4 stars or 5 stars. So that does make sense. And then the highest rated on Goodreads, it was a 4.64 average, is Dinosaur Therapy, which would have made sense because it's such a nice book. Like you read it and there's nothing bad to say about it. So I don't understand why it's the least shelved. I suppose the people who do read it really like it. Not many people read it, but everyone who does read it really likes it. So that does actually make sense. So yeah, it's a shame more people haven't read it, is essentially what I'm going to say about that. My challenge was 13 books. I read 13 books. I'm very happy with that. My goal for 2024 is 14 books. I've got a few non-fiction books that I want to read this year, and I'm sort of deep in those at the moment. So I don't think I'm on track at the moment, but I'm hopeful that in 2024 I will make more time to read and I'll achieve my goal of 14 books. So yeah, until the next time, bye.